This story happened to my friend on the deep web. I had a pretty scary experience too, but mine was a few years ago. This story happened to my friend just 1 week ago. For those who do not know, the deep web is pretty much the internet that isn't indexed by search engines like Yahoo, Google, Bing, etc. It can only be accessed by special software such as Tor. To give you some context, this is the friend that showed me how to get to the deep web. He has always been really fascinated with it, but after my horror story experience with the deep web hackers, he pretty much took a long break. He did not resume using the deep web until about a year after my story, but he didn't tell anyone. He would buy stolen Apple products, drugs, etc. About a week or two ago, he was buying some cocaine. It wasn't from the seller he normally buys from though, but it was really cheap. So he gave the seller his address and a fake email he used so they could stay in contact until the deal was done. He wasn't too worried. This guy seemed professional, and it was the same procedure for most of his purchases. My friend told him to ship it in a movie case or something that his mom wouldn't expect to have drugs in. This was probably his biggest mistake. He let the man know he was just a teenager, but my friend isn't the most careful of people. A few days later, his mom walks in the house and hands my friend a movie that he had ordered online. He took it and opened it up, but inside there wasn't any cocaine, just a piece of folded up paper. He opened it up and read, "There has been a problem. Email me for details." At the bottom, the man had left a new email for my friend to contact. My friend got on his email and asked the guy what the problem was. He responded, "Something has happened. If I were to send it to you, it could be traced back to me, and we would both be caught. Meet me at the elementary school at 7. We will just do it in person." The school wasn't too far away, so my friend told my mom he was staying the night at my house and headed off to meet the man. He called me and asked if I could be there with him, but I was really busy with my schoolwork, so I said I couldn't. I did tell him to take a knife or something though, just in case things went wrong. When he got to the parking lot outside of the school, he heard a car honking its horn. He saw it was just a Jeep, but the plate had been covered up by duct tape, and windows were tinted very dark. The man got out of his car and gave my friend the drugs, and my friend paid him. It seemed like everything went fine. My friend got in his car and sat there a bit in order to call and tell me everything went fine. He noticed when he had hung up, the man was still there though. Why was he waiting? He didn't think too much of it and drove off. When he got to the first red light, he noticed that the man's car was right behind him. He was starting to get a little nervous, but kept driving. When he reached his neighborhood, the man was still following him, so he decided it would be a bad idea to lead him to his house. He instead turned into the next neighborhood and took a whole bunch of random turns, hoping to lose the man. Eventually, he no longer saw the car, so he pulled the car into his garage and called it a day. The night, he noticed the sound of a car engine. He looked out his window and saw the man's car parked in his driveway. He got wide-eyed and snuck downstairs and peered through the window. Inside the car, the man was smoking a cigarette and talking on the phone, but in the passenger seat, he also saw a second man. The second one was a lot more suspicious looking, even more so than the shady drug dealer man. The second one had messed up hair, a trashy shirt, and while it was hard to see, my friend could almost make out a scar from a massive burn on the side of his neck on his face. He kept watching the two men until the second man began to look at the window more and more often. Eventually, he was just staring at the window my friend was watching them from. My friend decided he had enough and was going to call the cops. He didn't care if he would get in trouble at this point. He moved away from the window and called the police, who told him to grab a weapon or something to defend himself and wait for the police. He had waited for about 5 minutes when he was a figure quietly come out of his mom's room, who was still sleeping. The man shut the door behind him and noticed my friend had seen him. The figure sprinted towards my friend with that looked like a knife raised in his hand. My friend grabbed a pot from a nearby table and threw it at the figure. It hit him in the face and shattered. The figure screamed and fell to the floor. My friend turned on the lights and saw a second man with the burn rolling on the floor. His face was covered in blood and shattered glass were sticking out. His right eye had tons of blood pouring out. He must have been hit pretty hard. As the man began to slowly get up, my friend grabbed a kitchen knife and drove it into the man's shoulder. Another scream could be heard by the man. The man began to stumble over to the front door. When the police sirens could be heard, both men were caught on sight, but my friend's mom had been killed. Her throat had been slit and she had 23 stab wounds and duct tape covering her mouth. My friend was arrested too for drug possession, and his trial is coming up, but he lost his mom because of it, so I don't think he will be buying drugs from the deep web ever again.
Story 2. I've been into scary stuff since I was a kid. My mother got me into scary movies at a pretty young age, watching Stephen King movies and those 80s crappy horror films. Because she was into the morbid lifestyle, well, naturally, being my mother's daughter, I got into that same lifestyle as I got older. Watching YouTube and reading articles, you find some pretty scary stuff that not a lot of people would know about. That's why I found out about the deep web, the deepest part of the internet where people can buy drugs and illegal military-grade weapons, post child pornography, and even watch other people kill each other. Now, I take everything with a grain of salt. People love to make up stories so you won't sleep at night, so of course with my morbid curiosity, I wanted to debunk or see if these stories had some truth to them. My best friend Joe is a tech guy at one of my universities near my hometown, so I asked him how I would venture into the deep web. He looked at me as if I was stupid, and proceeded to warn me that I shouldn't do something that I knew nothing about. Being the stubborn alpha female that I am, I told him that he needed to shut up and teach me. He nodded his head politely and grabbed my computer. He first went through the steps on how to get there. First, download and install the Tor browsing bundle. This system is configured to use the Tor relay network, which anonymizes your network connection through a distributed set of relays to prevent someone from learning your physical location. Second, you go into the built-in wiki page set up for the deep web. This site, he said, helps you navigate through the matrix and gets you where you need to be. With my girlish excitement, I thanked him and immediately sped home to my apartment. I turned on Spotify, lit some candles, and dimmed the lights so I can start my new adventure. My MacBook Air turned on with a glee-ish tone, and I put my cursor over the Tor symbol. At first I hesitated, of course. I was nervous because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Bringing up the wiki page, I started scrolling through some of the pages. Like I thought, they were mostly drug-related stuff. If I wanted to buy a pound of heroin, I guess that's the place to go. Then I scrolled through a page that looks like a chat room. I could see people's usernames as they were communicating back and forth. I watched for a few minutes, just to see what these people were talking about. Then a link popped up. I was intrigued, so I clicked on it. At first it seemed like a normal porno page, the ones that you find on the internet these days. There was an area where you could click on the hyperlink and go to that room. Going down the page, I saw one that caught my eye. It said sleeping beside the words. There was a picture of a young woman in a nightgown curled up in her bed. Again, I was interested to see what it meant, so I clicked on that hyperlink. At first, all I saw was the same woman in her bed sleeping. There was nothing out of the ordinary about it. This picture looked like a still image, one that you would take out of a camera. Then all of a sudden, I could hear a loud popping sound. At first I thought it was coming from outside, or my air conditioner coming on since it was 90 degrees outside. But I soon realized it came from this image. I could see the curtains moving, slowly swaying back and forth. Bringing my head up closer to the screen, I could make out a small vent under the curtains. Is this a live feed, I asked myself? Situated on the right side of the bed was an alarm clock. Looking at the big red flashing numbers, it said 12:01. I quickly looked at my own clock on my computer, and it also said 12:01. What is this? After a few minutes of analyzing the picture, a message popped up on the chat box. It was from a username, a psycho killer. This message read, "It's time." At that moment, I could see the bedroom door slowly opening. A tall man with a medium build came into view. He had on black sweatpants, a black hoodie, and a ski mask. He made his way over to the bed. At first, he just stood there, watching this woman. He then reaches into his pants and pulls out a huge butcher knife. He glides it across her face, pressing it hard on her cheek. All of a sudden, you can see the woman open her eyes. She bolts up out of fear as the man throws her back into bed. She starts screaming, a piercing scream that echoes in my own home. He gets on top of her to hold her down. Without any warning, he puts the butcher knife in the air and slams it into her chest multiple times. The woman immediately becomes limp. The man proceeds to cut her neck open as blood spews all over him. He takes off his gloves and starts acting like he's bathing in it, rubbing the dark liquid over his face and neck. Tears started swelling up in my eyes. I ran over to the phone to dial 911. I knew I couldn't tell them who this was, but maybe I can help out in some way. As I go back to my chair, I turned to the screen. The man was standing there with a bloody knife in one hand. You could see the blood dripping off of his knife onto the hardwood floor, making a puddle. As he came closer to the camera, he waved. Suddenly, I hear a ding come from the chat box. Psycho killer. You're next. I shut my computer and threw it across the room. The whole next day, I tried to figure out if anyone knew the man or woman I saw. I searched high and low on the internet, news sites, articles, but I couldn't find anything. It was like these two people never existed. To this day, I haven't told anyone about what I saw on the deep web. I thought it was better off not sharing this information because people would think I was crazy. I know what I saw. It wasn't like some type of horror film or having a vivid imagination. I went onto the web to prove myself wrong. Because of my stupidity, I watch my back every damn day.